protocol that allow to get access to the base station without checking the activity of the other machine. We will see later on that we have other method. Well, it is characterized by the fact that if one machine has frames to be transmitted, it starts transmitting the frame. And if later on this frame will not be followed by acknowledgement, what does it mean? Acknowledgement mean, as we have seen in the previous chapter, it is an information coming from the receiver side confirming the reception of that specific frame. So if the frame is not acknowledged, then the station will simply uh, uh, restart later on the retransmission of the frame, and we have presented for you the algorithm that describes the function of the Aloha protocol. So today we are going to explain this algorithm in a clear manner, and I hope that you will be capable to understand it. We already did that last time, but I'm going to repeat it. So it starts when we have one frame, so one machine that has a frame ready to be transmitted, it starts at that level, okay? And then it will initialize a counter K with the value 0. This counter will be useful to count how many times we try to send the frame. So if the frame has been, I mean, if the number of trial exceeds a certain number, then in that case, the algorithm, the machine will stop trying to send the frame because the channel is supposed to be I mean, not useful for transmission. So we will get to a counter K that is, we will initialize a counter K that is equal to 0. Then we are going to start sending the frame, okay? And we send the frame, okay, without verification. As you might see, just whenever the frame it is ready, it will be transmitted over the channel. So we wait a time that is equal to 2 multiply the propagation time. Why? Because we need to wait the time that helps the message to go and to return back, and that time it is equal to 2 multiply the propagation time, okay? If we, of course, we neglect the transmission time of the acknowledgement, taking into account that the acknowledgement is a short frame in general. So if we receive the acknowledgement after 2 multiply the waiting time or the propagation time, then it is okay. The transmission has been done successfully. Otherwise, we increment the counter. So the counter will be incremental k is equal to k plus 1. If it exceeds a certain maximum value that is equal to 15, then great, it's okay. I mean, if we exceeds 15 times, then we have to stop. We have to abort and to stop trying to transmit the frame. But otherwise, we will pick a random value r in the interval 0 to 2 power k minus 1. Take into account that k, it is the I mean the sequence number of the trial. So k, it starts with 0. First time it is 2 power 0 minus 0, then sorry, 2 power 1 minus 1, so it is equal to 0, 1. Then second time, if we don't success, it will be 2 power 2 minus 1, so it is 4 minus 1, it's the interval 0, 3. Then the interval will start to be bigger. So every time we don't success to transmit the frame, we are going to increase the interval 0 to 2 power k, as we are going to see in the next example. And after that, we are going to wait a time that is equal to r multiply the propagation time. So the random value that has been picked in the interval 0 to 2 power k minus 1 will be converted into a waiting time by the formula r multiply the propagation time, or r multiply the propagation time. So please take into account that this random value is simply a value that helps to decorrelate the moment, because this algorithm is in fact run by every machine that is going to experience a collision. So if different machine, if two machines, let's suppose, have experienced both of them the collision with the absence of the acknowledgement. So each one of them, it will select a random value. Probably this random value, or most probably this random value will not be the same for the two machine. So they will be waiting different time, and they will be transmitting at different moment. That's the idea behind selecting a random value R. And then after selecting this random value R and waiting the time necessary for the retransmission, the machine will wait a time that is equal to the backup time. We call that the backup time, and then it will try to retransmit the frame again with the same chance of success. Are you understanding the flow chart of the Aloha protocol?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, let us take this example where we have a station that is using the Aloha network. Uh, so we suppose that several stations are using the Aloha network with a maximum of 600 kilometer apart. So let's suppose that the time, the distance of connection, it is just 1 second, please. Okay, so the distance, it is equal to 600 meter, 600 kilometer, and we assume that signals propagate at 10 to the power 8 meter per second. So it is the velocity of the speed, and of course, we are going to calculate the propagation time. The propagation time in that example, it is equal to the distance over the speed. So it is 600 multiplied 10 to the power 3, 10 to the power 3, it corresponds to the kilometer, and all of that divided by 3 to the power 8 meter per second, 3 10 to the power 8 meter per second, which correspond to the velocity. So if we calculate that, we will get simply 2 milliseconds. Now we can find the value of TB. TB, it corresponds to the backup time, and which represent the waiting time for different value of K. So when K is equal to 1, so the first iteration, when we don't success to get the transmission done, you see here at the algorithm that we increment the counter, and then we go to select the random value. So the random value will be selected in the interval uh, uh, 0 to between, I mean, the two values 0 and 1. If 0 would mean that the waiting time will be equal to 0, and if 1, we are going to wait a propagation time as a backup time. The station needs to generate a random number with the value 0 and 1. This means that the backup time will be either equal to 0 milliseconds or equal to 2 milliseconds, taking into account that the time, the propagation time, it is equal to 2 milliseconds. Do you understand this example? That's in the case for K is equal to 1. Is that clear how to calculate the backup time?
Yes.
Okay, then if K now it is equal to 2, so in that case the range will be equal to 2 power, so it's in the interval, let us say 0 and 2 to the power K minus 1, and that makes that the 2 to the power, if K is equal to 2, it will be equal to 4, and therefore it will be 0, 1, 2, and 3. 0, 1, 2, and 3. This means that the backup time can be either equal to 0, either equal to 2 milliseconds, either equal to, for 2, it is equal to 4 milliseconds, or equal to 6 milliseconds, based on the outcome of the random value. For K equal to 3 now, well, it will be from 0 to 2 power 3, which is equal to 8 minus 1, yani from 0 to 7. And every time we have to multiply by 2, so we will get from 0 to 14 milliseconds as a waiting time. And this procedure will continue until for all the value K that are less than or equal to 10. So if K exceeds the value 10, we don't increase anymore this interval. So this interval will not be increased. It does not mean that we are not going to increase the value of K. We will increase the value of K. But if K exceeds if k exceeds 10, so for example 11, the interval will be always 0 and 2 power 10 minus 1. So we will stop increasing the interval at k is equal to 10. So that's what it is expressed here. We need to mention that if k is greater than 10, it is normally set to 10. We don't increase anymore the interval. Is that okay?
Okay.
Well, that's the Aloha protocol, and the problem, one of the problem of the Aloha protocol is that we might get a consecutive scenario of collision where we have one station that that collided with another station, as you might see here. So we have a collision between two machines. That part indicates that the two frames will not be useful neither for A neither for B, and we will be obliged to send the frame C that will collide by the end. So there will be a collision at the end of A and C, which means that we might get to a scenario where we will get consecutive collision between different frames coming from different stations in a continuous way that makes that the channel gets busy for a long time. And that scenario is one of the very bad scenario that might happen in communication, because the channel will remain busy for a long time without any successful communication, which means that simply we are going to retransmit all the frame that has been transmitted during that time, and that's one of the bad scenario. So this scenario indicates that the vulnerability time, it corresponds to 2 multiply the backup time, or the time to transmit one frame. Why? Because one frame, so if we take an instant t, so from this instant t, we might start sending one frame at this moment, which correspond to t minus the time to transmit the frame. Okay, so we get back to this moment. If we suppose that we started sending the frame at this specific moment, okay, and the collision will happen just at the last bit, just only at the last bit, we have already a collision, okay? And we might get, so the vulnerability might continue until this moment, which could represent T plus TFR. So for a given frame, for the frame A, for example, it depends on the previous frame and the next frame to get a collision. Well, the possibility that we get a collision, the time on which we might get a collision, it corresponds to the difference between these two moments, and the difference between these two moments, it represents t minus TFR, t minus the instant time t minus the time to transmit a frame plus the time to transmit a frame. So that corresponds to the vulnerability time associated with the transmission of the frame A. And that's why the time here of vulnerability is very high. It is corresponding to 2 multiply the time to transmit a frame. And as I explained it, we might get a bad scenario where we have a consecutive collision. So the vulnerability time here is very high for the Aloha protocol. Are you understanding? Is that clear for everybody?
Yes.
Okay. So for that reason, there were another approach uh, for the, so here it is talking about the vulnerability time. We can calculate the vulnerability time for the, the transmission time of this frame. I move to the next slide, which is about the slotted Aloha. In the slotted Aloha, it is another method to get access to get access to the channel. But in this approach, we have some different assumption is that one machine can transmit only at the beginning of a slot of time. And this supposes that the time axis is divided into interval of time. So for all the machine, the time axis, it is divided into interval of time. And these interval of time, they correspond to what we call a slot of time. And one machine is capable to send its data during one slot of time. So as you might see here, the station 1 can send the frame 1 during that interval of time. The station 2, it sends during that interval of time. So one frame, one machine, when it has one frame ready to send the to be transmitted to be sent over the channel, it cannot start directly sending the frame. It has to first of all wait until the end of until the beginning of the next slot of time, and then it starts sending. But of course, we might get, as you might see in the second slots of time, we might get several machines that sends simultaneously their data in the same interval of time. And in that case, of course, both of, I mean, all of these machines will not receive an acknowledgement, and accordingly, they will decide that the frame has been collided with another frame, and they will decide to retransmit after. Now they will retransmit after a time, a backup time that correspond to the value r, the random value r, multiply slot of time. So it is not, the waiting time will not be equal to, or the backup time will not be equal to the r multiply the propagation time, but it will be rather r multiply the slot of time. So that's the main difference with the Aloha. Here we are going to see some characteristic of the and the assumption, of course, of the Aloha protocol. The assumption is that all the frames, they have the same size. So we suppose that all the frames, all of them share the same size. Time is divided into equal size slots. So we suppose that the time, it is the same for all the machines. They have the same slots. Time to transmit, it is equal to the time to transmit one frame. Nodes start transmitting frame only at the beginning of a slot of time. So whenever one frame is ready to be transmitted, we cannot start transmitting. We have to wait until the beginning of the next slot of time. If two or more than two nodes transmit in a slot of time, all nodes will detect that we have collision. So the operation is that when one node get a fresh frame to be transmitted, it starts at the next slot of time, at the beginning of the next slot of time. Now, if we don't have any collision, node can send new frame in the next slot of time. If we have a collision, node retransmit frame in each subsequent slot with a probability P until it get successful. Is that fine?
Yes.
Okay. So the vulnerability time, as you might understand it, it will be reduced in that case. For frame A, for example, if we take one subject here that it corresponds to the frame A, well, in that case, you see that the vulnerability time is simply equal to one slot of time. So it avoids the problem of pure Aloha, where we get to the vulnerability time. It is all of that time. It is the time that corresponds to the transmission to multiply the time to transmit one frame. Here it is reduced to only one transmission time of the frame, which correspond to one slot of time. Let us get a look on what happened to understand the function of this method, which is the slotted Aloha. So the times, they are divided, or the in 2 slots of time. So this is the slot of time number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. We have 9 interval of time, and we suppose that we have 3 stations that we are going to discuss their function over this example. So in this 3 station, as you might see, we have the station 1 that will stand here in the first slot of time, the station 2 it will stand here, and the station 3. Of course, this is a non-successful slot of time. It means that none of these machines will be capable to send correctly their data without collision. Then after that, we get to one free slot of time. Then we get to the station 1 that sends the node 1 will send the frame again. It will retransmit the frame again, and the node 2 will retransmit this frame again, but nothing guarantee that we will get a successful transmission, because as you might see, we will get again collision here. So this is a waste slot of time. This is another waste slot of time. Here we get to a sort of time where only the machine number 2 will send its frame, so it is a successful sort of time. Here we have a sort of time where we don't have any activity, so it is an idle sort of time. Okay, then here we have again 2 machines that will transmit at the same time. So at the end, if we count how many interval or how many slots of time have been used successively with the application of the slotted Aloha, we realize that we have only 1, 2, 3 over 9 interval of time. In this case of figure, we have, this is an example of course, but we have 3 interval of time that were used correctly among 9 slot of time, which represent a very low efficiency of the bandwidth utilization. So the advantage of the slotted Aloha is that single active nodes can continuously transmit at full range channel. So which means that one machine that is active, it can send with the full available bandwidth. It is highly decentralized, which means that one machine is completely decorrelated with the activity of the other machine. Only slots in nodes need to be synchronized. So it means that the interval of time, they need to be, of course, the same for all the machine. Otherwise, we get a problem, and it is simple to be implemented. Well, the disadvantage is that we have a high level of collision that depends on the number of the machine, and as well as the intense the activity, how intense is the activity of this machine. So it depends on the activity as well as on the number of the machine. We have some wasting slot of time. We have that's the wasting slot of time that are due to the simultaneous transmission in the same interval. Nodes might be able to be able to detect collision in less than the time to transmit a packet. So it means that the collision, the transmission, and the detection of the collision have to be both performed in that interval of time. And the other problem is that the clock synchronization. So these machine, the node 1, the node 2, the node 3, the node n in general, they are acting completely in a completely independent mode, which means that they are not physically connected together, or at least they are not connected over the same clock of signals and clock signals, and accordingly we get a problem of synchronization between the different machines. So one of the biggest problem to apply this method is the synchronization between the different machines, because it is needed here that all the machines have to detect exactly at the same instant with the precision of milliseconds at least. They have to detect the beginning of the slot of time and the end of the slot of time at the same moment. They don't have to share different beginning and different end of the slot of time. Any question about that?
Clear.
Okay, now we are going to talk about the carrier sans multiple access. So we have discussed the Aloha protocol. In the Aloha protocol, we have two versions, which is the slotted Aloha and the pure Aloha. And now we are going to talk about the algorithm CSMA. What does it mean, CSMA? CSMA, it means carrier sans multiple access, carrier sans multiple access. And in this method, the idea is very simple, is that we want that one machine, instead of sending the available data without taking care about what is going on in the channel, it will be much more important and much more, I would say, uh, uh, smarter to first of all look to the channel, verify whether the channel is free. If it is free, we start sending the data, and it's not. If it is not free, we just wait for the availability of the channel. So one station now, it follows the activity of the other station. Simple rules is that we have a polite human conversation. We listen before talking. If someone else is talking, we just have to wait until that person finish his talk. Otherwise, we can start talking. But if we detect that someone else is talking in a simultaneous way, we have to stop talking. So a node should not be sending if another node is already sending. This is the simple rule. So carrier, it means transporter. Okay, so this is the meaning of carrier. It is to say transporter. And which transporter? It is the transporter of the signal. It is the carrier of, when we say the carrier, it is the transporter of signal. So the idea here is that this method is based on detecting, sensing. It is about sensing. What's that? It is about sensing. Again, I'm not successful. Is about sensing. Sensing, it means detecting the transporter of the signal. That's what we call the carrier, to ensure multiple access. So it is a multiple access method that is based on detecting the signal that transports that carry the information. Okay, so that's the meaning of the carrier sense. But however, even if we apply this method, it does not mean that we get to 100% sure to transmit without collision, because in fact, when we send from one machine A to one machine D, let us analyze what happened. We have machine A, the machine B, the machine C, and the machine D. A and D, they represent the farthest two machine in this architecture. And what you see here in this axis, it is in the vertical mode. This is the time axis for all the machine. Okay. And now let us suppose that at the instant T1, the machine B decides to send data. So at the instant T1, the machine B decides to send data. That's what you see here with this color. This is the transmission time. The signal will propagate in this direction, but it will also propagate in this direction. Now, at this instant, at that specific moment, we suppose, so here, we suppose that, not here, so at that second moment, which is the instant T2, the machine 1, so this machine C okay, decides to send data, what it will do if it decides to send data? It will simply apply the sensing of the channel. What does it mean, applying the sensing of the channel? It will detect if at that level, so at the level of the machine here, it will try to check, it has a sensor here, and it will detect if at that moment, in that specific place, we have a signal that is transporting information. So in that case, you see here that in this scenario, you see here that the wave that transports the signal is not yet arrived to the level of C. So it is at this level, as you might see, الويف وصلت لهنا، قطعت المسافة هذه فقط. Okay. Then the machine C will decide, applying the CSMA, it will decide that the channel is free. And therefore, it will start sending data. That's what you see here with the yellow color. At the instant T2, it will start sending data. But we know that in reality, the channel is not free, but just because of the propagation time, the signal is not yet arrived at the level of the machine or at the position of the machine C. So the two waves, they will propagate each one in its direction, and we will get here, we will get a collision. That collision, it will propagate back into the direction of the machine B, but also in the direction of the machine C, because at the end of the collision is simply a superposition of two signals. The resultant is still a signal, and that signal will propagate back to the machine B and to the machine C, where they will detect that we have a collision, and they will apply the required action upon the detection of this collision. Are you understanding?
Yes.
So this is to say that with the application of the CSMA, when we apply the CSMA, we will not guarantee 100% that we will not get collision, but still we are reducing the probability of collision. So one station, in that case, it has to follow the activity of the other station. How it can follow the activity of the other station? It has to look, first of all, before sending data, it has to look first of all for the availability of the channel. If the channel is free, then it will start sending the data. If the channel is busy, then it will wait until it gets it free, and then it will start sending the data when it gets the channel free. Do you have any question about that? Okay, we'll continue. So now the CSMA CA, they apply three methods to verify whether the channel is free or not. They apply one of what we call the persistent method, and the persistent method, they are method that could be applied to verify the availability of the channel. So we have what we call the non-persistent method or the non-persistent strategy. We have the persistent strategy, and we have the p-persistent strategy. What does it mean, persistent strategy? Persistent strategy, it means that the channel will be waiting for the or the machine will be waiting for the availability of the channel in a persistent mode, which means that it will try to get the availability of the channel, and then it will try again and try again until getting that the channel is free. If the channel is free, it will start transmitting the data. Otherwise, it has to keep waiting. So persisting, it corresponds to the scenario that you see here. So let me skip some slides and go to this one. So persistent, it means that one machine, it has to continuously checking the availability of the channel. What you see here in the blue color, it represents the time in which the channel is being busy by the transmission of data coming from another machine. Okay, so one machine has, first of all, to continue detecting the availability of the channel until it gets it available. Once the channel is available, then it can start sending the data. That's what we call persistent method. Now, what does it mean, non-persistent method? So the non-persistent strategy is a strategy where one machine has to check if the channel is free or not. If the channel is free, it can start sending the data, but if the channel is busy, then it has to wait a time before checking again the availability of the channel. So between two consecutive moments of checking the availability of the channel, we have to wait a time t. So that's what you see here in this flow chart. One, the non-persistent strategy, it means that we sense if we have a carrier, it means that the channel is busy. If it is busy, we have to wait a time t, and then we have to come back and check again the availability of the channel. Now, if the channel is not busy, then we can start sending the frame. So this is in the case of the non-persistent strategy. Now, the third method that is applied for the verification of the availability of the channel is that's what we call the p-persistent strategy. And the p-persistent strategy, it is using the awaiting, it combines the two methods. In depth, it is using what we call a persistent strategy. So we continue checking the availability of the channel until we get sure that the channel is free. But if the channel is free, we have to apply a probability at the output of the machine to verify whether we are eligible, whether one machine is eligible to send the frame or not. So that's exactly what you see here, but we'll explain it later on. So the p-persistent, well, first of all, we are going to check the availability of the channel in a continuous mode. So if the channel is idle, it means that we have to check whether we have the right to send. The right is coming from waiting time. So we have to wait a time, and we have to that time it expresses somehow the aspect of probability, and that probability when it is verified, then we can start transmitting. Otherwise, we have to wait a number of slot of time or a slot of time, and then we have to check again. So that what happened here is exactly what you see here. So we check again the channel. If it is idle, if it is still idle, we can come back. Otherwise, we use the backup process in order to come back to check again when the channel is free. Are you understanding the p-persistent strategy? Okay, so just would like to sum up. We have the non-persistent strategy, we have the persistent strategy, and the p-persistent strategy are the three methods that are used to detect the availability of the channel. The persistent strategy means that we continue checking the availability of the channel, and when we have the channel, it is free, we can send the frame, but with a probability p. You will understand later on through an example. This slide, it shows the different, with the figure, it shows the different method. The one persistent strategy, we have to wait until the channel gets free, and then after that we might apply a probability as an output to check the eligibility to send the frame. The non-persistent strategy, it means that we continue, we check in a periodic manner, so there will be a waiting time between two consecutive moments of checking the channel. And then if the channel gets free, we can start sending data. But of course, we have some as you might see here, between one moment and one consecutive moment, we might get that the channel is free, and accordingly, it will go undetected this part of time, or the channel will not be used during that time, simply because the channel is not applying the appropriate methods. And the P persistent, it means that we check in a continuous way the availability of the channel, and once the channel is free, we apply a probability which corresponds to wait a number of slots of time until we get eligible to send the frame. So that's what we call the P persistent method. These three methods, they can be, one of these three methods can be used by the CSMA to verify the availability of the channel. Are you understanding? Okay, so this is great. We are much in advance compared to the other group, so maybe preferable to stop here because last Monday I wasn't capable to ensure the lecture for the second group. So with you, I will stop here. And next lecture, inshallah, we are going to continue with the CSM ACD. Please keep in mind again that I'm going to send you a mail telling you that you will get your midterm, not the first week after the holiday, but the second week we will get the second midterm. Okay. So for instance, we stop here. I'm going to take your attendance. Unless, of course, you have any question. If you have any question, you can raise it up. Okay, so that's the your lecture. Stop share. عبد الرحمن العواد.
موجود.
عبد الرحمن العنيزي.
حاضر.
يزيد المعيوف.
موجود.
نواف هويدي.
حاضر.
فيصل آل الشيخ.
موجود.
ناصر هكشة.
حاضر يا دكتور.
عبد العزيز الهاجري.
حاضر.
عبد العزيز الحسيني. الأمير آل سعود. عبد الرحمن الميمان.
حاضر.
محمد الجلاجل.
حاضر.
هشام القحطاني.
حاضر.
معاذ المدرعة. هشام بن هويمن.
حاضر.
عبد الله القحطاني. سلطان المطيري.
موجود.
عبد الله الراجح. طارق الحسيني. نواف الفريح. فارس الغفيلي.
حاضر.
Okay, thank you very much. See you inshallah next lecture.